What's up, Joe? What's up, everybody? This is another edition of Sports 360. I'm Jeff Fannell, and as always, I'm here with my man Rob Duran of Rob Duran Sports. Rob, what's up, man? How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing great. We're just coming out of the Labor Day weekend, so that's nice. Had that extra day off. I'm doing great. Um, Getting rested. I'm working on my Southern accent. Do you hear it yet? You hear it? You hear you hear it coming on? That means I got to keep
Oh
working on
man,
it.
yeah.
I
A
got to
couple,
keep working on it.
maybe a couple more weeks, and you got it in there.
Maybe a couple more weeks. Yeah, I've been down here in Charlotte for 3 weeks, and I'm working on it, man. But listen, you know what? In all seriousness, though, I'm not working on my Southern accent, but I think I might have told you, you know, um, you know, going back to last year when the pandemic started, I've been, teaching myself Spanish. Um, when I say teaching myself, Duolingo and other apps and things like that. Um, and I've been pretty diligent with it. Because I was in school, Spanish wasn't that difficult for me. It's like it made sense to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And so it was just one of those things that I always wanted to pick up. And when we got to the pandemic, it's something that I did pick up. So I enjoy that. I enjoy learning, and so I'm not going to learn a Southern accent. That's just joking, but you know, but I am working on my Spanish. Maybe I can combine them.
there you
Maybe I
go.
can speak Spanish with a Southern accent.
There you go.
That's what I'm talking about. Take that. Anyway,
Man,
um, so listen, man. Come on, we got to talk about your Yankees. I
oh
mean,
man,
the team that was on a 13-game winning streak. The last time we spoke, they had lost 2 games against Oakland, and you felt pretty confident, Rob. They were going to play Anaheim and then Baltimore. They're playing Toronto now, but they lost 2 out of 3 to both Anaheim and Baltimore. Can't be happy about that, and that's coming off the 2 losses to Oakland. So they're like, and then they got spanked yesterday. So if my math is right, I believe, what are they, like 2-9 or something like that in their last 11 games or something?
yeah, 3-7 in their last 10. Not what
Okay,
you
3 and
want.
7. No.
Not what you want. Not at all. I know. The winning streak had to end. We all knew that, and it did. They beat some good teams during the streak, and then I did feel good. The Angels haven't been a really good team. Baltimore even worse. So I thought, that's 2 out of 3. It would go the Yankees' way, right? Wrong. Because I knew Toronto would play themselves. Toronto somehow, their offense is just insane. They're gonna play somebody tough every night. Um, so man, I'm not happy. If anything, the Yankees are consistently inconsistent this year. They either look like they're gonna go undefeated in the playoffs, or I'm gonna have issues sleeping at night because they're getting smacked around. And right now, I'm having issues sleeping at night because they're getting smacked around. So, not happy,
Yeah.
Jeff. I'm not happy.
Yeah, they really do have to get it together, and they have 3 more with Toronto, including tonight's game. Um, and they really have to get it together. They have to get it in gear. And we talked about that. That even though they had the 13-game winning streak, and they really didn't have much margin for error because Boston continued to play well. Tampa is just running away with the division. And then you have teams like, Oakland and Seattle. We haven't spoken much about Seattle, but,
Yeah.
Seattle's up there contending, for a wild card. Um, so the Yankees have to play. They have to get it in gear. And losing against Baltimore. And listen, I know technically Baltimore is a major league team, but realistically, you know what I mean? There's some teams that are pretty much borderline AAA teams. You
Yeah,
have to beat them. The
have to.
Yankees have to beat Baltimore. They can't lose 2 or 3 at home. They can't do that.
No, you listen. Like I said earlier, they played good teams during that streak, and they beat them. And it wasn't like it was ticky tack wins. Like they were beating these teams. So when you're going against lesser competition, man, that's where you have to. They honestly should have won 6 in a row at that point, and then gone into Toronto, on a six
Yeah.
game winning streak. But that's
Yeah.
baseball, man.
It is. It is. And that's the thing. Baseball's a humbling game. You hear that said a lot, but it's true. Um, and in this situation, the Yankees now find themselves having to play better baseball against one of the better, if not the best, offensive team in Toronto. So um, the next 3 days are going to be tough, and then they do have this Subway Series against the Mets, and the Mets have been playing better, but they're in a stretch of 15 games in a row against the Marlins and the Nationals. So the fact that they've been playing better against those two teams doesn't really say much. But they still struggle. They had a 5 game series with the Nationals this weekend. They won 3, lost 2. Should have won yesterday. Right now, they're 4 games out of first place. They're in third, but they're 4 games out of first. And they end this season against the Atlanta Braves, who they currently trail. The Braves atop the NL East. So technically, are the Mets still in it? Yes. But realistically, I think the Mets should just stop. You know what I mean? Just stop.
Yeah.
But they'll keep. The play. I'm not saying the players should. The players are going to compete. That's what they do. But I think Mets fans need to stop. And for me, I'm a Mets fan, but I'm not rooting for them to make the playoffs because in my mind they're not a true playoff team.
Yeah, and they seem to be one of those teams that just kind of gives you a sense of false hope, and you kind of feel they're gonna go on this little winning streak, and just when you're feeling good, it's like, wait a minute, we have a chance. They're gonna blow a couple games, and then they're done for. So, I mean, I hear what you're saying. You don't want to have that sense of false hope and think that the Mets are gonna make some noise in the playoffs, because I don't think they're built for the playoffs. They're a 500 team. And we kind of spoke about this a little bit off air. At this late in the season, you are what you are.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we all know what the Mets are, and really what they have been all season. They were the beneficiaries of teams like Atlanta not playing so well early on. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with them the rest of the way, but we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see is exactly right. But clearly they are mathematically, I mean, they're right there. 4
Yeah.
games out with, still a good 3, 4 weeks left in the season. They're right there. So we will see what happens on that front. Um but turning to something, Rob, that is really interesting, that's starting to percolate in a lot of different ways, and that is COVID-19 and vaccine mandates. There have been some recent stories coming out of, for example, out of New York, the MLB network, where studio analysts John Smoltz, a Hall of Famer, and Al Leiter can no longer work in studio because they are not vaccinated. And the MLB network has a vaccination policy. And we saw something similar with the Washington Nationals, where longtime executive Bob Boone, former player, again, longtime executive of the club, he resigned because the Nationals have a policy where all employees have to be vaccinated. Not the players; they're represented by a union, so they can't do that. But Bob Boone said, "I'm going to resign rather than get vaccinated." And then, Rob, the thing that's really, really interesting is that the NBA announced that, in those markets that have local mandates or local requirements, for vaccination, like New York City and in San Francisco. Um, and those requirements say that if you're not vaccinated, essentially you can't enter into an arena, a stadium, or so forth. The NBA said they're going to honor those policies, which would mean that players on the Knicks, the Nets, and the Warriors will not be allowed to play home games unless they can show that they have a medical or religious exemption. That could be huge.
Big time.
Let's start with that. What are your thoughts on that last part involving the NBA players and these local vaccination requirements?
I think that we may see some players, and obviously it depends on their vaccine status. We may see some players losing games, home games. If they play for a New York team or for the Warriors or something like that, we may see guys missing home games or missing half a season if they don't get vaccinated, which is insane to think of. You think of the kind of star power that Brooklyn has, for example. If one of their big three or even another player of theirs isn't vaccinated, that's half a season they're missing because of that. And that's insane. I mean, I can't blame the NBA, can't be mad at the NBA for doing what they're doing and mandating the vaccines to this capacity because, they have the right to do so. It's their choice. They're the employee, they're their employer. So, you have to do what you have to do to protect the business at the end of the day. But it'll be very interesting to see if there are players who are not vaccinated and are missing games. And it could be very important games. We may be looking at, this is way down the line, but playoff games at home that they might miss. It's something, man.
It really is. It really, really is. And, right now it's New York and San Francisco. It remains to be seen whether other municipalities will, enact, similar requirements. But, you know, we're starting to see employment status being directly affected by vaccine policies, right? The Washington Nationals with their vaccine policy. Houston Astros also have a similar policy, and I'm sure other professional sports teams as well. And so, again, these policies don't filter down to the players because the players are represented by a union, and that's a subject of collective bargaining. But outside of that context, these professional franchises or sports entities like the MLB network can decide to have these types of policies, and we may see people now like Bob Boone, you know, having to make a choice. And I said it to you earlier. Bob Boone is 73 years old. He played 19 years in the big leagues, longtime executive, used to manage, he's been around baseball. He's a
Yeah.
baseball lifer, right? But he's 73. And, I say that from the vantage point that he is in the position to make that type of decision. But what about the 33-year-old, right, who's trying to start his or her career, and they have a family at home and they're faced with a similar choice? See, to me, that's where it starts to get interesting. And right. And those choices are going to have to be made. So in addition to what's going on in the NBA, I think taking it outside of that context, it's still very interesting to see what these teams and other sports entities are going to do as we go forward. And if the variants keep, having the adverse effect that they're having right now, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens there, Rob.
Yeah, a lot of choices are going to have to be made. Whether people want to continue working for where they work, if they're willing to sacrifice and lose their employment over the vaccine status, whether they want to go job hunting and go somewhere else that doesn't mandate or doesn't have a vaccine policy. Yeah, like you said, it's not just going to be sports. It's not just going to be sports networks and things of that nature. It's going to be everywhere. Universities are doing it, colleges are doing it. It's trickling down, and we're going to get to a point where we're going to see a lot of people, or may not see a lot of people that we're used to seeing on a daily basis.
Yeah. And you mentioned, other institutions doing the same thing. I know scholastically, many schools are having, have a policy that if you want to participate in sports, you need to be vaccinated, right? And so, um, I can see many parents being upset about that. But one of the things that I taught sports law for over 10 years, several years ago, uh, um, and one of the things I used to try to emphasize to my students and to anyone who would listen, right, is that when you're in school, right, and even elsewhere, but when you're in school, there's no right that a student has to play sports. You don't have a
Yeah.
right to it. It's a privilege. It's not a
Yeah.
right. So, the idea that a school says, or a district, that you have to be vaccinated in order to participate, I imagine some parents are going to be upset and they're going to erroneously say, my child has a right to play sports. No, no, she doesn't. No, he doesn't. Nobody has a right to play volleyball.
Yeah.
you know,
Sure.
and if the schools want to institute policies, then talking about rights, they have a right to do it, right? In terms of trying to preserve the safety of the entire student body and the school and the district, and they have a right to make those choices. And we're going to see kids being affected by this as well.
Yeah. And I think, to your point, and that's a good point, a lot of people are going to confuse, you know, what organizations, what institutions, what, all these places have to do over what their personal choice may be. And there's going to be a lot of gray area for people who are upset with this. But at the end of the day, like you said, it's a privilege to play sports. It is. And you hear this in professional athletes speeches and Hall of Fame speeches all the time. It was an honor and a privilege to be able to put on this uniform, to play this sport, and so on and so forth. So, we're going to see some tough choices.
Yeah.
Very tough choices.
Yeah, we really are. And so and I think we're just at the tip of the iceberg, really.
Yeah.
But I will tell you, I am really, going to keep a close eye on what's brewing in the NBA, because the NBA came out and said they didn't have to, but they came out and said, we're going to honor those local policies and we're going to, enforce those policies against our players in those jurisdictions. And so, um, we really have to keep our eye on that because, as you said, an unvaccinated player in one of these markets seems to be right now subject to missing half the season if he can't play in home games.
Yeah.
That's nuts.
That's wild.
It really is. So it bears watching to see what goes on there. The other thing, Rob, that we've been watching for some time, and we mentioned this months ago, but Naomi Osaka, she lost in the U.S. Open recently, and at the end of her match in the press conference, she announced that she was taking a break from tennis. And, that press conference was, you could see the struggle that she is having and the range of emotions that she is experiencing. But she says she's going to take a break. And, she doesn't know when she will play tennis again. For me, Rob, you know, I, I hope that she is able, to get to a better place, to get the support and the help that she needs. And I hope she takes as much time as she needs in order to get there. But that was another big story of the past week. Your thoughts on that?
I'm with you, man. I hope that she takes whatever time is necessary, whether it's 6 months or if it has to be 5 years, whatever it takes, because at the end of the day, the sport is better with her in it. We know that. And she's a phenomenal athlete, one of the best at the sport in general, period. But at the end of the day, her mental well being, her emotional health, that's priority. And I don't care what profession you're in, what you do for a living, what you do for work. If your mind has to be right, to be able to perform and just live day to day. So I think whatever time she needs to get her stuff figured out, get everything in order, that takes priority over anything else she can do in tennis. Excuse me, in tennis. Period. I just want to see her do well in life, and then we can worry about the athlete later on once everything is good to go.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and yeah, you have to be pulling for her.
Yeah,
And, obviously she had taken a little bit of time off. I think it was at the French Open, right? I believe it was at the French
I
Open.
believe so. Yeah,
Um, and she came back, and she was competing, as I said, in the U.S. Open. But I, I would think now that her absence from the game will be a lot longer than it was the first time around, as she seeks the help that she needs. And yeah, just really rooting for her and pulling for her, in all kinds of ways, just to get to a better place. And you know what? This is one of those things. It's not even about tennis.
yeah,
It's not about tennis. This is about her emotional and mental well-being as a human being, and that's the only thing that matters. It really is. And so hopefully she gets to that better place. Um, and the other person we had spoken about recently, Sha'Carri Richardson. Um, you know, I we mentioned same thing, that we were hoping that she was okay because of some of the recent things that were going on after the Olympics, where she came in dead last in the Prefontaine Classic, and then had that bizarre, you know, interview right
yeah.
afterwards. And then recently she posted on Instagram one word, the word violence, with a toggle switch turned to on. And then she went out and placed fourth in the 200. And she got some backlash from people on Instagram saying, you know what, I was supporting you, but now you're kind of out there, and it's not about all that. Compete, train, you know, honor your talent, those types of things. There were a lot of comments along those lines. Um, I don't know if the wheels are coming off the Richardson wagon, but I don't like what I'm seeing, man. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm not liking it either, man. And I'm with you. I think some of it has to do with her age. She's very young. But I also think that it's a matter of maybe, and I don't know this for sure, but hopefully she has a good support system. And I know we spoke about this last time too, an actual support system to guide her through this, because she is in a very tough storm right now of stuff going on since the Olympics, and nothing is going her way. And for somebody so young to not have things going their way when they pictured, or they may have had this picture of, I'm going to get gold when I go to the Olympics, and then I'm going to be celebrated, and none of that coming to fruition, and struggling after that. Like you said, you don't want the wheels to fall off that wagon, and for her to go into a downward spiral and then become this what if story. You know what I mean? So I hope that she has this great support system, whether it's family, whether it's friends, coaches, trainers, whoever, mentors, whatever it is. Hopefully these people are surrounding her and saying, listen, maybe we should take a step back, and let's not worry so much about you, the athlete. Let's worry about you, the person. Let's get you, the person, right. Let's get you mentally focused on doing things right. Not saying things on social media. Forget social media. Let's close your accounts for a year. Forget about what people are going to say. Let's just focus on you. And then once we got that in order, let's then start training and focus on you, the athlete, again. And I hope that, man, because she is young, and it's hard as a young person, or I should say it's easy as a young person to fall into that cycle of negativity. And I hope that she finds her way out of it very soon.
Yeah. And see, here's the thing that I think about sometimes, Rob, in times like this. We live in an age where athletes no longer have to wait for media, beat writers and media writers to get their message out there, right? They don't
Yeah.
need to, right? They got their social athletes like everybody else, they have their social media platforms. And so, if you want to, 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, whatever time of day, you can get your message out there. I think that's a blessing and a curse if
Yes.
it's not used properly,
Yep.
right? And I think in a situation like this, like you said, maybe just get away from stuff. Just sort of like, dial it back, focus on, your well-being, focus on your training, focus on developing and maximizing your talent, and then get after it, right? Because if you do that, that's all that, that speaks louder than words. Not fancy Nike commercials, not some cryptic, ominous Instagram post, right? Violent. What does that mean anyway,
Yeah.
right? But you're gonna do that, and I don't know if that's in her best interest right now. So I think this is one of those situations where the ability to simply get your message out anytime you want to is not necessarily a good thing, right? And
Yeah.
so I think on all points it would be helpful to her if maybe she just dialed it back a bit. That's just, I mean, that's two brothers' opinions, right? I'm sure she probably could care less, but um, there you have it. Um, hey, listen, last week you made a comment um, when we were talking about the New York Mets and, you know, the now defunct thumbs down celebration. Um, and you said, I'm sorry to say, but that's just a Mets thing, right? And and I was like, yeah, you don't have to apologize. I know it is a Mets thing, right? And then the next day, their GM, Zach Scott, coming home from a party thrown by the owners, Steve Cohen, gets pulled over and cited for driving under the influence. And I thought to myself, here's Rob thinking, that's a Mets thing too, right? And this is not to laugh at Zach Scott or anything, or to make light of driving under the influence, which is no laughing matter.
Yeah.
But certainly, it's just one of those things that just continually makes you shake your head when it comes to the New York Mets, right? Um, and so here he is, and Sandy Alderson announced that Zach was not going to be traveling with the team, and he doesn't need to announce that Zach Scott is a goner at the end of this year, right? Um,
Yeah.
but given that he got into that post only because Jared Porter got
Yep.
dismissed from that post because of sexual misconduct while he was with the Cubs, you would think that this young man would be on his P's and Q's. It's amazing to me, Rob, of what folks will do. Um, and so that's another Mets thing, but unbelievable, huh?
The best part is, after our podcast last week, Javi Baez scores the winning run in the Mets' next game. So, and I believe he tied the game with a hit and then scored the winning run. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then in the celebration, his earring comes off,
Yeah.
right? And Sandy Alderson, who just dressed down Javi Baez and all the Mets for their thumbs down celebration, spent a half an hour on his knee in the Mets infield, combing the grass, looking for Javi Baez's earring. You can't make this stuff up, man.
That's as Mets as it gets. There you go.
Yeah, yeah. It really does, man. It really does. But
Man,
I will tell you though, you know, some of the things that happens with the Mets is a little bit, it's like worthy of Saturday Night Live skits. You know what I mean? And some of the decision making has really just seemed to be so poor, whether it's personnel decision making or, you know, um, personal decisions being made by certain individuals. Whether it
yeah,
was Mickey Callaway or Jared Porter, and here's Zach Scott. Um, but the DUI thing, and I think about that because there's a story that's breaking now that Mark Few, the coach of Gonzaga, was cited for DUI last night. You know what I mean? And so this stuff is, it's again, whether you're a coach, a GM, a player, high profile.
yeah,
And these types of stories continually being in the media, just not a good look for these individuals or the institutions that they represent. It really isn't.
yeah. And listen, man, there are so many ride services out there, Uber, Lyft, all these things, where if you want to go out to a party, have a good time, and you having a few drinks, just Uber it, man. It is not. It's not worth the risk to go out there and drive. If my wife and I go out, one of us is the designated driver. If we want to go and have a few drinks, and we know that,
Hmm.
and that's just
Hmm.
what it is. And if we're going out in a group, same thing. One person is a designated driver. That person's not drinking at all that night, and that's just how it is. When I go visit my friends in New York, same thing. We take a cab because we know
Yeah.
we're gonna go downtown and we're gonna maybe have a few drinks. We don't want anybody driving. It's just not worth it. And so
No.
having all these stories out there, and it's like you said, high profile people in Gonzaga, which is a big school, huge school, D1. Um, that's just not okay.
No. And like you said, you know, with Uber, Lyft, there's so many ways to get around. It's not even just getting a cab or a limo, right? This is so easy.
Yeah,
And so, you see these things going on, and it that's why it makes the decision now. Not that it was ever, okay. It never was. But it's even more so now indefensible. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
Because of the ease of getting a ride, you know? It's just indefensible. And it just really shows, a level of irresponsibility um among these individuals. Again, not trying to sit in judgment, but we don't need stories like this. You know what I'm saying? We just don't.
yeah,
Um, and we often talk about players setting the example for young people, right? That's often said, but I think GMs and I think high profile basketball coaches like Mark Few, um, the same standard applies. Same standard applies, right? Because when this happens, it's out there as well. It's a
yeah,
story, and it's a story that could have negative consequences. Um, speaking about being responsible, um, I really would like to know because here's what I'm thinking, Rob. I'm thinking that you and I can do something. You and I can get together, put our heads together, and we can come up with a team, and we could call it Bishop Sycamore 2. And I think we can pull some guys from the YMCA. We could pull some people off the street. We can do, just I don't know, pull some guys off Facebook or whatever, and see if we can get ESPN to buy into televising our game. Um, I think, nah, that could never happen.
Oh man, I can't believe that.
Come on, man. Who was asleep at the wheel at ESPN that they're televising this game. It was like 58-0 at one point, right? I don't even know. Was that the final score, or was that like the score after the first 10 minutes?
Oh man,
Um,
I don't know if you saw any of the highlights, but somebody could have got hurt real bad. They were
come
sharing
on, man.
helmets. They were sharing helmets because they didn't have
Sharing
enough for the
helmets.
whole team. Oh man,
And they were
I don't know.
playing, I believe, on a Sunday night. Was it a Sunday night game? And some of those players had played in a football game Friday night.
Yeah, yeah. There was like it was like a 2 or 3 game span, two or three games in a span of like 2 days.
Yeah.
Incredible,
Yeah.
insane.
I I don't know where the failure was, in Bishop Sycamore, right? Who it's being investigated now. It's like not even being an institution or a school, right? You know, but they somehow convinced the higher ups at somebody at ESPN that they could play in a televised game against one of the better teams in the nation. I don't even know who the team they were playing, but it was certainly, you know, a ranked team. And here they were coming, Bishop Sycamore,
Yeah,
and highly touted with all these highly touted recruits, supposedly. And meanwhile, it seems like it's a farce. I
it's
don't know how that happened.
I don't know, but somebody must have lost their job after that because that's. Oh man, I'm with you though. I'm down to start a team.
Yeah, yeah, we could start something, man. But yeah, I mean that's the kind of thing that you just wonder. Again, you can't make this stuff up. But yeah, that happened recently, and ESPN, um, just seems to be in the news sometimes for the wrong reasons. And real quickly too, you have any thoughts on ESPN's interesting to me, Rob, because once one of their high profile people seems to get embroiled in something, pretty soon they're gone, right? Whether it was Jamel Hill, whether it's Dan Lebitard, um, you know, you know, once ESPN starts to criticize the talent, usually that talent is short lived, right? That person is going to be on the way out, and we saw it with Rachel Nichols, right? Um, I think she's still at ESPN, but she's been reassigned and had the jump taken from her and all the rest of that.
Yeah,
But it's really interesting to me how ESPN kind of operates. And quite frankly, from the outside looking in, whether it's again, you know, Jamel Hill or whether it's Lebitard, whether it's, uh, Rachel Nichols, Max Kellerman, right, who recently got replaced, right, because Stephen A. Smith wanted him out from First
yep.
Take. Um, it just seems to me, from the outside looking in, that ESPN is not a good place to work.
It doesn't seem that way, and you hear a lot of guy like Colin. I'm blanking on his last name, but
Cowherd?
Colin, yes, he's he takes a lot of shots at ESPN. He doesn't say ESPN, but you know he's talking about ESPN. During his show, he takes a lot of shots at them about the type of network they are and the higher ups and stuff like that. So, um, yeah, the stories that come out from people who used to work at ESPN are very interesting to read because it doesn't seem that way when you're invested in watching ESPN and you're growing up thinking, man, I want to work for this company. But then you start reading these articles and you're like, do I really want to work for this company? It seems that they're very cutthroat, and that's the type of industry they run. And I don't know, man. I used to want to work for ESPN. I don't know how I feel right now.
Yeah, well, I hope you don't, because the minute you say something or do something that crosses the line, oh, you'll be there for a little while, but the clock will be ticking.
Yeah,
And it happens all the time. Because when this story broke about Rachel Nichols and what was it, Maria Taylor? Was that the
Maria.
other,
Yep.
right? I just knew. I said, Rachel Nichols, I said, they're gonna come after her.
Yeah.
That's the ESPN way.
Yeah. And I'll
That's
tell
the
you what,
ESPN way.
she's getting the boot, Rachel Nichols, and we all know that. I think she has like 1 year on her contract or 2 years. she's probably not going to show up anywhere. They'll probably buy her out or something of that nature to get rid of the contract. But she just called out ESPN as well in the comments she said, where ESPN has lacked in, showing their diversity over the years. And now they're doing it a lot more now because of the climate we're in and people speaking out and things of that nature, which is, I know for a fact is, you want to have diversity. But I think she called ESPN out. They have for many years lacked in diversity, and she called them out, and they didn't like it.
Yeah. Yep. And now, they stripped her of a lot of, her high profile work. And, she's another one of those, we often were talking about like, when we were, uh, what's her name? Candace Parker and others, who we say, man, when it comes to talking basketball, they really are locked in and bring a lot to the table. I think Rachel Nichols is like that as well. Has great relationships, built over years in the business. I mean, she went after it and she grinded and, good for her. And now, again, because of the ESPN way, it just seems to me, right? Controversy hits and ESPN, does what ESPN does, right? They get rid of the talent. Seems to me, they should put as much effort into being on the lookout for the next Bishop Sycamore. Maybe that they need to put more time into that than trying to act high profile talent. But that's just one man's opinion. So
maybe it was Colin who sent Sycamore over to them.
It could have been, man.
Gave him a tip. Like, here, this team is coming up. You guys might want to showcase them prime time.
It probably was, but in any event, man, listen, good catching up with you again this week, man, talking about, a bunch of these stories. And again, that NBA situation is something to keep an eye on. And whatever happens with the COVID mandates and requirements locally, I think is going to affect it. Look, it's affecting all of us, but the impact that it may have on the games and those who call the games and are involved in the games behind the scenes bears watching for sure. So we got to keep our eye on that and all the other stuff going on. But it was good to catch up with you one more time, brother, and chop it up. So let's look to come back and do it again. And hopefully, bro, your Yankees will get it together. And I'm telling you this, wouldn't it be something if by this time next week the New York Mets are in first place?
Oh boy. Yeah. That'll be a great episode, I'll tell you that.
Well, I don't know how I would feel if that were to happen, but I'm not gonna that how I feel. I'm on record. Let's just play this out and see what's going on. But the Yankees, man, I'm pulling for them because I want to see the Yankees make the postseason and hopefully do some damage. But they got some work to do, bro. They got some work to do.
They do. I'm just gonna stop talking about them.
All right. Well, we'll get back at it next week. We'll come back with another edition of Sports 360. Until then, you be good, brother, and we'll catch you next time.